What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Turn On Jets podcast. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPod11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. TOJ Talks, which is, this episode on the Badlands feed, TOJ podcast, which will be hitting your feed generally, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then all 32 Mondays and Fridays, CLNS Media. Happy weekend. Happy, one of the, I guess, the biggest downtime, really, in the Jets calendar is outside of right before, training camp starts where we all start to get excited. This is, one of the more downtime periods, and kind of want to just take the next 10 minutes or so, talk about some things around the team and, where the Jets are at and other things of that nature, and kind of address, some of the, I guess, happenings on Jets socials and things like that. Biggest news of the week: the Jets cut both their special teams, aces from 2 years ago, and Greg Zuerlein and Thomas Morstead. Morstead, a friend of the pod, but had a bit of a down year last year as well. And the Jets will save about $2.5 million. Kind of made sense there. Look, I think Morstead was a fan favorite, but at the end of the day, a guy who's 38, 39 years old, and again wants to keep playing, which is fantastic. And you hope that he can play for the next 10 years and punt forever. But new regime, the Jets, I don't think they really want to be paying their punters $3, $4, $5 million right now. They can, have an undrafted free agent, and it's going to cost them. Get out of South Carolina. It could be McNamara as well. That's going to cost them like $600K. And does that $2 million, help add an extra defensive tackle, an extra edge rusher? Does it help a receiver? Other things like that. Does it help with extensions, etc.? So the Morstead one made sense. The Zuerlein one made even more sense. Again, you could say, hey, why'd they wait this long? Sometimes I think they've gotten in there. Those guys have been kicking, whether, Zuerlein's been around and Morstead obviously punting on his own, but a lot of these guys have been in the building working out, and they've been there for a couple weeks now, and you got to look at some of the young guys and say, hey, let's roll it. Could you have a camp competition at kicker? Sure. But again, Zuerlein's going to save you a couple $1 million. He's a guy who was really, really bad last year. No doubt about it. Got kind of the phantom IL stint in the middle of the year, or towards the end of the year, and Anders Carlson didn't really cover himself in glory either. So the Jets, Caden Davis is probably the guy that ends up winning the job, in my opinion. He was, from asking some people, I don't know that he's like a money kicker, but he's got a huge leg. He's unbelievable at kickoffs, like best hang time in college football by far. And again, people can scoff at that, but the Jets were horrible at it last year. One of the ways they were bad on specials was they never were able to pin a team deep. It was like the kick was bad, the coverage was bad. Both those things should be far better in 2025. And hey, can the Jets steal possession to force a team back up into their own 10-yard line as opposed to starting out at the 30? Like these little things that the Jets did not do well a year ago, and frankly haven't done well in a long time, is adds into them not winning football games. It's not just, yes, is quarterback play unbelievably important? Absolutely, man. Quarterback play is extremely important. Is coaching very important? Yes, but it's also the little things around the margins. It's the penalties, obviously. It's drops. It's missed assignments. It's botching things on punts and kickoffs and fakes and not creating explosives. All these different things. But I don't blame the Jets in the slightest for doing what they did on specials. Hey, can we play a punter and a kicker right now, like $1 million combined, and those guys could be at least 95% of what the duo was a year ago, and those guys were getting paid pretty significant money for what they were bringing in value for the Jets. So no problem there. And I think if you're crashing out over Morstead and Zuerlein, man, like I don't know what to tell you. I just don't. Those guys are both in their late 30s. Not part of the long-term plan. What if the Jets can, find a kicker here for 3 to 4 years? That'd be nice. Zuerlein had a really nice 2023 season. No doubt about it. The guy was money. He was horrendous last year. He cost them probably 3 or 4 games on his own. Between him and Rodgers, like 8, you could argue 8 of those losses are just on like not being able to orchestrate a 2-minute drive to win a football game and missing kicks. And, Denver, New England, Miami, the list goes on. So Buffalo, it's like, honestly, it's just outrageous. Other than that, Jets will be starting some OTA stuff, next upcoming couple weeks. They've been doing a lot of workouts, things of that nature. All signs point to a lot of the, again, we talked about, me and Joe talked about, like, very little drama, which has been a nice and refreshing thing to kind of witness. I've talked about this for quite some time, probably since back in January. I think the reason for optimism for this Jets team is the 2024 Mets. I know Joe and Connor do a fantastic job of talking about Jets examples. I wanted to give it an example that's not a Jets example. And I was going to, the 2017 Yankees are another one where a lot of those core guys remained, but they kind of changing the guard a little bit into this younger core of roster. Everyone played better. They had some young guys come up. And obviously, again, I'm not expecting Mason Taylor to be Aaron Judge. But the 2024 Mets to me are the prime example of, a recent memory of where, look, the Mets going to 2023 off the 2022 season, 100-win team, all this expectation, spent a shit ton of money, big time, big name manager, is on the hot seat, is he not on the hot seat? The whole 9 yards, and they were horrible in 2023. They were disgusting to watch, in my opinion, and it just was not a fun season. I don't think any Mets fan looks back at that year and loved the way it went down. 2024, they come in, no expectations at all. Everyone's Mets are, there's no talk about the Mets going into the 2024 season, and a lot of those same guys remained. Your Lindors, your Petes, all these different guys, and 1-year deals around the margins with guys in their prime, and a lot of these different situations where the Mets invested in starting pitching and some bats and stuff like that, and the Jets have invested quite a bit in those guys in their prime on 1-year deal, prove-it-year deals, and we still have this really good core, we feel like, and we get coaching's going to be such an upgrade, the vibe's going to be better, the locker room's going to be less toxic. We're just going to get back to playing like the back of our baseball card. And I've talked about this theory a lot because a lot of for the Jets, I think, is playing to the back of the baseball card. And hey, can Sauce be the 2-time All-Pro? I think he can. So hey, is that your Lindor? I'm just using as an example. Is it like hey, struggled like 2024? I'm gonna be at worth every penny and all the hype and all those different things. Can Breece Hall look like the Breece Hall of even 2 years ago? Versus last year. Can Garrett Wilson have a consistent 17 and be used in the slot, be used in motion, put in advantageous situations? These are not things where I'm saying, hey, you got to go out and acquire 9 different guys. This is more of like, hey, can you guys just be who you're supposed to be, right? Like, and again, Will McDonald and some other guys had nice years last year, him and Sherwood, in particular. But hey, let's get Michael Carter back to Michael Carter, and let's get Quincy Williams back to being Quincy Williams. Can we get Olu for 17 and Membu for 17? Can we get AVT to really look like the guy he was 2 years ago, pre-Achilles, and hey, first full health, the offseason, and all this stuff? Like, that's the reason for optimism to me is there's a lot to be made in sports of just accumulating talent. You're not building a roster. We've talked about that so many different times. If it's not just Aaron Glenn himself talked about it quite a bit on One Jets Drive is I'm building a football team. I'm not building a roster, just accumulating talent. So I kind of feel like it's Sunday, be a little positive here. But again, there's obviously reason to be like a little bit down on the Jets right now. There's no question. I get it. But to me, that 2024 Mets example where, again, I'm not expecting the Jets to go make the title game. Point being, like, there's every bit of opportunity to go end this playoff drought. And hey, can you swing 2 or 3 games because you were more prepared, you were a better coach? Hey, we were going to be a 6-win team, but we flipped a few of these games we shouldn't have won, and that we should have won last year. We didn't win, and it flips back our way, and now we're a 9-win team, and the playoff drought's over. The pressure's off, and now you can just go ball and have this cap space and draft picks and all these different things. Like, I don't know. To me, I just think, like that's the formula, for the Jets. Last couple other things here. I think the remaining rest of the offseason, I would expect the Jets probably had 1 defensive lineman, maybe 2, maybe a tackle, maybe an edge. I could see them playing in the market of Darius Smith, Clowney. They add one of those guys, if the money's right and kind of circumstances. I don't think that'll be until right before camp. I don't think they make a move at receiver unless Lazard is moved. I just think it's a very busy room. I think you're more likely to see a move if Lazard is moved. If not, I think it's Reynolds, Lazard, Johnson. Arian Smith, Corley, maybe if he's on the roster, Gibson, maybe if he's on the roster, guys like that. And then obviously Garrett. I don't know. There's just maybe a UDFA pops in there. We'll see. But again, I just think I'd say defensive line's more likely right now than receiver. I think Garrett and Sauce get done still. I don't see anything. I'm not wavering on that at all. I think Simpson's a guy you wait. We'll see. Obviously, his wife has a residency in New York the next couple of years, and maybe does he get bumped up to like a $10 million a year guard? I think AVT is a guy that'll be the most interesting one, just because if you're AVT, you probably want to wait, right? And just who knows? Give yourself a shot at maybe 25 million on the open market. Maybe he's a guy that sits there and says, "Hey, I like being here," and wants to stay. So, quick 15 here on Sunday. Everyone enjoy the weekend. I'll be back Tuesday, guest Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday next week. Appreciate it for listening. We'll talk to you guys soon.